Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is our Empower You series. Tonight's session is going to be on transition, and our speaker tonight is Ed Dallaire from Cincinnati Public Schools. He's one of the district's transition coordinators. So, what we do on our evening series is really we just go through a topic and then invite you to ask questions. It's a small group, so you're welcome to put your questions in the chat or unmute and just ask when we get there. I'll watch for raising hands and all that good stuff. So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get started. So Ed, I will let you take it away, and I will pull your presentation right up.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would just reiterate what Melissa said is, obviously this is very informal, and so if you do have questions or are looking for clarification on any of the terms or any of the topics, please feel free to kind of unmute and ask those. So, all right. So again, like Melissa said, we are going to be talking about post-secondary transition and looking at kind of students going from the high school setting to their life beyond, whatever that looks like. So we do want to make sure that families understand the basics of transition planning. And one way it looks very simple, but then when we think about all the different options and opportunities that students have as they are working through their high school careers and beyond, it can also feel really overwhelming. So we kind of want to make sure that people kind of have a sense of what transition planning looks like so that people feel like they're confident going into the meetings and the conversations. Right. So we do want to, so in the IEP, then section 5, one of the main sections of the IEP, it's to help students explore their education, their employment, and their independent living, and what can the schools be doing to help support the students to be as successful as possible when they leave. So. Right. Okay, go ahead, Melissa. Thanks. And then, yeah. And you can kind of go through, there's about 5 of the bullets there. So as the screen says, this is section 5 of the IEP, but it is called transition planning. This is setting the students up for life after high school. Thinking of it like as a runway for a plane. You want to have as much time to kind of build that momentum and that speed, getting some of the experiences, building the connections with OOD, or Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, and DDS, the Developmental Disability Services, partnering with these agencies that will stay with the students, even post the high school career on into adulthood. So building those relationships, giving the students the skills and the opportunities to kind of see what options are there so that they can make informed decisions as they're pursuing the different career options or employment options and education that goes with it. So. Go ahead. All right. So what should it look like? We'll see. It'll be as unique and as individual as the student that's exploring their career and their options. So there's 4 bullets here. Melissa, if you want to. Right. So it should be very purposeful. It should include the vision of the students and the family. This should not be driven by the schools. If this is the individual's life and their interests, we want the plan should be written around them to support them so that they are successful and they're happy living the best life that they can. So the goals, they do address employment, education, and if needed, some independent living skills as well. All right, keep going. So as setting up transition plans and goals as it relates to the IEP, it is section 5 of the IEP. It begins when the student turns age 14. You can start it earlier than that. So if it's appropriate to start kind of exploring some of these conversations about employment when a student is 10, 11, 12, you can always start it earlier. But the state indicates that it must be started by the time a student is 14. So when they're 13, that IEP should have a Section 5, a transition plan embedded in it. So the goals, they do need to be specific for the student, the individual student, and again, addressing education, employment, and independent living. And within each of those categories, looking at what's called the PINs, which is their preference, the student's interests, their needs, and their strengths. So we're trying to be as holistic and encompassing as possible to support the student in all facets of their life, and looking at like multiple sections within that. So we'll get into a little bit more specifics there. So since the acronym is AATA, or Age Appropriate Transition Assessments. So as the IEP is written, there should be some data backing up what the student is interested in, what experience the student already has, what are their strengths, what are their abilities, and their preferences. And there is a huge range of assessments and tools to kind of get some of that information. Sometimes like the Dunn-Rankin preference, learning inventory, work preference inventory, just anything that's going to kind of help guide the conversation on what the student does want to do or what the student doesn't want to do post high school, and kind of what skills they have mastered and what skills they'll need to work on. So sometimes teachers or schools will send things home to get some of the family input on that. Sometimes they're giving that just to the students. But all of these decisions and choices, they should encompass what the student wants, what the family is interested in, and it should have some data to back it up. All right. Yeah. So as the school is kind of writing Section 5 of the IEP and setting up some of the plans, it's the school's responsibility to be gathering a lot of the data to make sure that they are giving the student adequate experiences and activities to explore the things that the student is considering and looking at. Make sure that they've got, the schools have the resources and the connections to kind of see what other opportunities there are. And they really want to focus on what is the best path for the student, for that individual student. Yep, that's it. And so then the family's role is obviously to advocate and support the student, kind of keep an open mind about what are some of the possibilities and opportunities for the student or your children, and then to help provide some of the information so that the schools and the students and everybody can make an informed choice together. Yeah. So again, like an IEP meeting, this is collaborative. It's team focused. So this is what Section 5 will look like on the IEP. It gets a bunch of data and it gets mashed together fast, but this is kind of the skeleton structure. So the first part is going to be the goal. And we'll look a little bit about how those goals are written. That next part, the age appropriate transition assessment. What is the data that was collected? Yeah, thank you, Melissa. What was the data that was collected that's going to help us understand what the students' preferences are, what their interests are, what their needs are, and what their strengths are. And then from there, below is the course of study. So how are the academics going to tie in with this goal and help support the student to be successful? And then below that is what are the actual goals? So there should be about 2 or 3 goals and activities that are very specific and relate to the student reaching their successful outcome. And then where Melissa has the mouse hovering there, they will tie in with the academic goals. So as you're planning for some transition activities in Section 5, they should be correlated and relate to the goals, the academic goals in section 6. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then who's the person responsible? Is it the intervention specialist? Is it the guidance counselor? Is it a behavior specialist? Who's going to help that student reach that specific goal? Okay. So starting at age 14, around 7th or 8th grade, some of the transition goals are going to be a little bit more generic. They're going to just kind of be exploring general areas of study or general career clusters. But as a student gets older and they get closer to their 12th grade year, the goals should be getting more and more specific. They shouldn't be kind of general career exploration by 12th grade. They should be like very student focused of like, what is their interest? What are the fields that they really do want to be exploring and even begin applying for some of those positions or some of those educational opportunities that directly relate to the student's outcome. All right. And then similar, as the student gets older, the academic goals in section 6 of the IEP, they should be matching up more specifically with the transition goals. So maybe in 7th grade, it's appropriate to kind of focus on the general academic foundational skills. But by 12th grade, the academic goals in the IEP should be much more aligned with the specific outcomes of the student. So if a student is interested in like a college career pathway, then punctuation and grammar would no longer be appropriate to kind of match and support that student's outcome. Thanks, Melissa. Okay. So this is a general like formula on writing the goals, and we have like more specific ones on the next one. But it kind of just outlines that after high school, and then the name of the student, they'll be doing what specific thing, and then where will they be doing it? And so we have a couple examples on the next one. Yep. So so section 5, like it does have the 3 parts: the educational training, the employment, and the independent living. So for education and training, like an example would be after graduation, but Patricia will attend a college in the medical field. So you want to, again, be as specific as possible and as appropriate. Not just go to college, but for what area of study or what purpose. The next part of section 5 is the employment. And so here the goal would be Patricia will be employed in the medical field. And then if independent living is appropriate, the student needs some extra support to live independently. After graduation, Patricia will live independently with friends. So like as we write some of those goals, they sound like they're really, really specific. And so the schools are not responsible for making sure that the student reaches those specific outcomes, but they are responsible for making sure that they follow the appropriate steps and actions that would help that student be successful. So like an appropriate goal would be maybe helping the schools or the teachers help the student complete an application. So they would be responsible for helping students complete applications, but they would not be responsible for the student actually getting a job. Or maybe the teacher intervention specialist is going to help students explore local colleges, but they would not be responsible for making sure that the student actually is enrolled in a college. So you want to have the steps that help the student move forward, but it's not directly related on the outcome of that specific goal. I don't know if somebody has a better way to kind of phrase that, but it's kind of a fine line of you're supporting the student to walk through those steps, but you're not responsible for like the actual completion of the race in a very specific way, but continue to guide them in the direction that has been outlined. So the Department of Education, they did kind of create this outline, and there's some links. This is a live link when Melissa shares this out, that it kind of even in pre-K, you can begin some of the conversations and some of the transition activities with students, and those continue through elementary school. And then kind of within this roadmap, in section 14, it becomes a little bit more focused and serious, and then it keeps going in specificity when you get to high school and all the way up to age 22, if that's what is appropriate for the student. But this is a helpful guide, and there's a couple links within that that could explore.
And when we're finished, I'll show you the Padlet again, and this will be linked on there as well, the PowerPoint, and then I'll put a direct link to this on the department's website for you all.
Thank you. And then here's a couple of the resources that we pulled from. And then the contact information. So Megan Horsmeyer, she works with the Hamilton County ESC. She's a great support if you have more specific questions about transition. And there's my contact. And again, I'm at Cincinnati Public Schools, work with transition and guiding students from high school, exploring options beyond. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything specific. And again, I do think I would reiterate, like, this is kind of like the runway. And so like as much as you can kind of build that momentum and speed is supporting the student, exploring the career options, exploring what training they're going to need to be successful, the more likely there is for success as they leave school. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome. So everyone, I put the link to the Padlet in the chat for you. So this is, if you want to bookmark it, that is an easy thing to do. When you're bookmarking, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. If you're not familiar with bookmarking, this is in Google Chrome, but what you can do is go right over here and there's a star. And if you just click the star, it will say bookmark added, and you can say where you want to put it. So if you want it in this toolbar right under your search kind of box, just put it in the bookmarks bar, and it will pop up for you there. And so then you can always find it. So tonight, after tonight, I'll put the PowerPoint deck and then the link to the transition roadmap and the recording here for you so you can find things. But I'm sure there's some questions out there. If anybody's curious, we have a couple parents tonight. So if you have a student at age 14 or older and you're curious what transition might look like for them, ask us while we're here and we're happy to help. And if you have a student younger than that and you're curious, ask us, what's on your mind. And then we also have a couple people from DD and CPS also on here, some more experts. So if anybody else wants to add anything, please feel free.
Hi, my name is Sylvia. I'll ask a question. I'm a parent,
Okay.
and my kid's on the younger end. So let's say he's 11 right now. I'm starting to hear that like IEPs disappear after high school. So what kind of mechanism is there to kind of like link the templates that are being worked on quite rigorously, in my opinion, with wherever they are going next? Like, is there anyone receiving it, or how does that transition take place?
Yeah. So again, it's going to depend on the student. If the student does go to college, there are like colleges and universities, they do have departments that will provide many of the similar supports and accommodations that a student has in their IEP. It won't be as structured, and it will fall on the student to kind of advocate to get like the supports that they need to be successful. If a student is not going to college, then some of the agencies like OOD or DDS, developmental disability services, or opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, they should be partnering with the student and the schools in high school, so that as the student leaves high school, as the teachers fade away, these agencies will stay with that student as long as needed and as is appropriate. So I don't know if anybody else from any of those agencies would like to say more about kind of how that handoff happens, or kind of some of those specifics. But there should be some good partnership, especially in the 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, so that there are appropriate supports in place when the student doesn't have the support of the school anymore.
And one of our upcoming sessions, I can look at the calendar in just a second, is about that whole college experience and how we get the universities to help the students advocate for themselves. We'll have to do some training on that in high school as well to help them be ready to do that. So if that's what you envision for your child, then having those conversations about helping them advocate early for themselves is good. But in our other presentation, they'll talk about what to disclose, when to disclose things. And it just depends on the university. They all have to support the 504. You'll end up transitioning it to a 504, but it depends on which university, how much the Department of Student Services or Disability Services talks to the professors, or if it's all on the student to go talk to the professors. There's kind of a blend and a continuum out there. So that's when you start looking at post-secondary education, those are good questions to put down, of asking, what their disability services look like and how that all works.
Okay, helpful. Thank you for letting me know that there's an upcoming, more training, education. You said something that I wasn't familiar with, so I just want to poke at it. You said like the IEP transitions to a 504. Is that definitely the case, or only if you work it very kind of proactively? Not necessarily the case.
Do you want to talk about that, Melissa?
I'm not an expert, so I will say that I know that if the student still needs those accommodations for time or reading support or language support, those kinds of things, then it does go to a 504. Ed, do you want to talk how the IEP kind of ends?
Yeah. So the IEP, it sits under the IDEA law. And so that is very school specific. The Americans with Disabilities Act, that will pick up and support some of the accommodations and supports that individuals need outside of the school. So there can be some overlap on what supports a student gets within the school. But when they leave the school setting, then it does fall under the ADA specification and laws around that.
I put in the chat a link to understood.org. It's a great website, and there's some information there about how it's not a 504 plan. It's about, like Ed said, about accommodations, a part of the rehabilitation law, the 504.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. So our
I broke
post-secondary.
another nail.
Uh-oh. Our post-secondary evening is February 6th. So we'll have a variety of things that evening. We'll have Think College, where it's an organization that helps you think about college with your child. And then disability services at a few local universities. And then some specialty programs at local Ohio universities that for students with more significant disabilities. And then we'll also talk about College to Careers, which is part of OOD, and how they support students at Ohio colleges. And then our Ohio Technical Centers, which used to be called Adult Education, at some of our large career centers like Great Oaks or Butler Tech. Cincinnati Public has a little bit of adult technical services, so we'll talk about those as well. That'll be a big busy night. So, but here's our schedule for the rest of the year so far. And next month it will be how to support your child during different stages of their educational journey. And O'Calley is going to talk to us about that. And then in January, we'll be talking about summer and like summer camps, those kinds of things. And then post-high school graduation planning. February, the post-secondary. March, we'll talk about Social Security disability benefits. And then in April, introduction to some adult services and connecting with outside agencies. And then if we have another topic, we'll put that there on the May 1st schedule. If this is another thing you might keep bookmarked, I'll put the link in here too. It's the SMORE, or our newsletter for these evening sessions. And it'll have the same thing on here every time. So the Zoom link is always there, so you know where to log in. And then the Padlet link is here as well for all the resources. So if you keep this handy, you'll be able to get the topics and everything as well. Are there any other questions or more questions? I know this was kind of a quick topic tonight. So I'm going to ask you guys a question then real quick, just to pick your brains on our visitors on the call tonight. How did you hear about the session? Because we're trying to make sure our region is aware of it. We serve Butler, Claremont, Warren, and Hamilton counties, and we've sent the information out to school districts, but we want to make sure we're sharing the information as much as we can. So if you have any tips on how to get this series advertised to the parents or the people who really need the information, please don't hesitate to tell us or drop those ideas in the chat for us.
So I don't know how I got onto this distribution list, and I think I missed September, October. So I kind of magically came through on November, which is great. I was on it last year. But I also know that I was missing a lot of CPS like communication for a while. I would guess that because my child is in the Strides program for CPS, kind of like the behavioral unit, like they somehow forwarded my contact information to kind of like be on this distribution list.
Okay, great.
But
And
that would
thanks.
be that would be a good target audience in my opinion.
Okay. And libraries, April. Great. When
My
would you?
son attends Gamble Montessori High School, and we've been putting it out. I think I forgot this month, and I do apologize, on our Facebook page, so parents are aware of it. And I'm also going to talk to the secretary about putting it in the weekly updates that we get every week, so parents will know about it.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. April, how do we access the recording? So if you go to this SMORE link, which I'll drop it in here again, and then when you click down here on the Padlet link, it will take you to this document right here. It's kind of like our virtual bulletin board for everything. And so tonight's things will go in this column once the recordings updated. It'll probably be tomorrow. And so then our recordings from September 5th and October 3rd are up here. And then the items the guests shared or the speakers shared, or where you can find more information, are linked below. So you can scroll and pick what you need. All you have to do for this is just to click on it. And then it takes just a second to pop up, but then the recording will start. And you get to hear my voice. Sorry, I'm not a fan of how my voice sounds on recording. And then same with these things. Like if you want to download this decision-making supports, you just click on those three dots and it will tell you how you can do it. You can download the attachment, and then you can also just open it if you want to take a look at it. So, And then our contact information is in State Support Team 13. So if you get stuck or something, don't hesitate to email us with questions.
Can you just describe what is State Support Team 13?
Sure. So I work for State Support Team 13, and it is the regional area of support for the Department of Education. So we work with school districts in Butler, Warren, Hamilton, and Claremont counties. Usually the districts we work with need a little bit more support than others. But we cover anything from special ed, family engagement. We're doing a lot with literacy this year with the new science of reading, or the different reading things you guys might have heard about. We offer some different professional learning for teachers, and then a lot of our time is spent coaching principals and superintendents about how to do some improvement processes so their students always get the best. So I work with special ed, but I also work with career tech education about helping our career tech instructors do great lessons and planning in an inclusive way, so that our students with disabilities and really all of our students have better access to that content. Because research shows if students are involved in career tech, they tend to graduate early or on time, and we see more students graduating from high school if they've been involved in career tech.
Got it.
Any other questions? I don't want to hold you. I know the Bengals are playing in a little bit, so I guess it's still a little early, 6:30, but I don't have my orange and black on. So Amanda, Andrea, Keisha, you have anything you want to share?
No.
One other question, like, so this transition planning, does it happen for everyone within IEP at age 14, I guess? Because that's when it starts getting a little bit more rigorous. Like it's just blanket, like everyone with an IEP goes through this section?
Yes. Yep. And to that point, regardless of kind of where the student is and kind of what their outcome is, you can tailor the goals within Section 5 to match that student's interest. So every student with an IEP, Section 5 should be completed, and it should be specific about where that student wants to go, whether that's college, whether that's the military or employment or like a technical program. Regardless of where they're going, you would still complete Section 5. The independent living is kind of an optional one, just if a student is going to need more supports. That would kind of involve like if they need help learning how to navigate around the community on Metro, maybe driving isn't an option for that student. So they would need some more supports, or if they would need more support with cooking, kind of those things about living as independently as possible. That one is optional, but the education and the employment, those should always be filled out and updated every year.
I think this is great. I mean, my child is in 6th grade going into 7th. So, in CPS, it's kind of the big, you lottery into your next phase, I guess, high school, middle school. So in some ways, seems like it would be helpful. I don't know, because he's also not 14. So it'd be helpful to kind of have a little bit of that discussion as you make this choice, right?
Yeah. And so being in CPS, knowing that there's 18 high schools and each of the high school programs are very unique and specific, whether you're interested in construction or healthcare or performing arts. There are a lot of options, but we know that once students kind of make that decision in 7th grade, rarely do they kind of pivot out to kind of match a career that maybe they would be more interested in. It's just all their friends are at that school. They know how to get there. They know the routine. They know the teachers. So having those conversations now, really making like a choice that matches where the student's interest is, I really believe will make a huge difference down the road.
Yeah. And this is that live secondary transition roadmap. So if you click on the little information dots, more information will pop up. Well, I guess it took me to the career advising piece. So turning 14 years old, it tells you some different things you could do, and it also has some more downloads. Sends you to some other links. So I'll definitely put this in that Padlet so you guys can explore this more. And like Ed said, with your child being 11, 12-ish, starting to think about that middle school piece, now that you've seen that section 5 of the IEP, you can start talking to your child too about, what interests them for work, or what do they see themselves doing? And then you can have those conversations about, how to help them get there. And if they say, they want to be a professional ball player, you can always say, well, what's your plan B in case that doesn't work out? Those kinds of things. Just getting them talking.
You guys aren't getting like the professional YouTubers and
Oh, we get those too.
We get those all the time. But then trying to kind of, take that conversation is, what is it about being a YouTuber that you're interested in, or what skills does a YouTuber need? And so, if that's what their interest is, being able to kind of tailor that and like, well, let's look at what does graphic design look like? Let's look at what media recording looks like. So the goals are still purposeful and they still match what the student is interested in doing, but not locking into, they can only be on YouTube and they can only talk about Fortnite, really kind of expanding what is it about that interests them, and kind of expanding the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. And the same with professional sports. Lots of people say they want to be professional basketball player, professional football player, but then exploring kind of what is it about that interests them, and kind of what steps could they take if they really do want to pursue that. What does it take to become a professional player? What does it take to go to Division I college to play?
I thought I saw Amanda unmute. And then. So.
You did. You had asked for my input. And for me, I just like to try to stay on top of the latest and the greatest in the world of transition. I support a lot of people. I'm a professional, so I support a lot of people who are transition aged and beyond. And you never know when the rules or the applications are going to change, or new information, or even better, new resources are going to come out. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for putting it.
All right. Well, if nothing further, we'll go ahead and I'll stop the recording. And then if you have any questions, we'll hang on for just a second, a couple more minutes. And if not, feel free to leave when you are ready.